right, Patrick Royce every single Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday here on Mackie and Judd. And Mondays, Royce Unchained. You can also find him at Teresa's in Golden Valley, just shoveling nachos into his friends, the three of us.
Man, that shirt I had on yesterday, grabbing those nachos, will not be usable for about 2 weeks.
Oh, no.
Needs to be soaked for a couple of weeks.
The chorizo usually nukes my intestines, like I told you guys, but so far so good today.
That's
so
right.
Far, so
Hang
good.
in there. Yeah.
So Judd's got the Tonio bobblehead. We'll get to some Tonio and Jim Kaat, but Pat, how are you going to remember the Mike Zimmer era of Vikings football, which I think, whether it's official or unofficial, like it's probably over.
Yeah, it probably is over. And if he doesn't win a playoff game, it's over. And if he doesn't make the playoffs, if he loses Thursday, it might be over. I'll remember him as, he just kind of ran out of steam. I think he came in and he was an improvement, and they played some. He definitely spiced up the defense for a few years, and I think that's kind of lost that too. They've adjusted to him, and I think I will remember Sunday as one of his dumbest coached games. I think I'll remember that as figuring out a way to lose to a team that hadn't won a game all year. But he doesn't seem to me to be as effective the last couple of years as he was earlier. I think he just kind of ran out of steam. You kind of thought they were sick of listening to him, and now it seems like he's trying to be a nice guy, which is really not his forte. So I think he's changed his methods this year, trying to at least publicly trying to get along with get more players on his side. I don't know if he had to do that or not, but I think he's just a guy that ran out of steam and never quite got there. Never quite recovered from the Blair Walsh field goal, did he? That was and I guess what I'll remember also is the absolutely miserable performance in Philadelphia when they had the Super Bowl sitting in their laps to play it in their home stadium. That's probably as close, except for 98 season, as the Vikings were going to get to a situation where you thought they can win the Super Bowl. And, to show up in Philadelphia with that stinkeroo was, kind of the Minneapolis Miracle was the zenith, and a week later it was the nadir. It was that's I'll remember that, and I'll also remember the stinker at the end of the season against the Bears the next year when they had to win to go to the playoffs, and the Bears had nothing to play for, and they came out and just puked all over themselves. And I guess those are things I remember. The teams didn't finish strong, and he ran out of steam. That's what I'll remember.
And Pat, I'm not assessing blame to one guy here, but I think the one thing that we'll also look back on and marvel at is how much of a failure the Cousins experiment was. Like that was supposed to be coming off the loss that you're talking about. That was supposed to be, okay, you've got your quarterback, Mike. Now your defense is going to work and it's going to be great. And the relative lack of success off of that experiment is pretty remarkable, considering I think what the ultimate goal was.
I have always been of the belief that decision wasn't even made by Spielman. I think that
or by Zimmer
was made by the Wilfs.
Oh,
I think they wanted to make a huge splash. We're going to get a new quarterback who is the number one guy on the free agent market. I've always felt that was more of a business decision than a football decision, because Zim was not in any. Now, he wasn't a Keenum fan, so I suppose he was willing to take Cousins, but I think it was. I see Wilf meddling in that decision. I've always felt that way.
Yeah. Another thing too is a lot of the people that staunchly defend Kirk as this, almost like this martyr, that he's the unluckiest quarterback ever. Look at the numbers he puts up, and then the kicker to it's always, what do you want to go back to Christian Ponder and Tavares Jackson? And it's an interesting notion because as garbage as T-Jack and Ponder were as quarterbacks, they were so cheap. The Vikings were allowed to build rosters, and guess what? They went to the playoffs as 10-win teams with both of those guys. Yeah. I guess my point is there's different paths to the same mediocre point that this franchise keeps going back to.
Yeah, that's.
I'd rather have Cousins. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but not at $40 million.
No, his personality drives me crazy. He came in and when he was starting off and he was this arrogant guy, and then he became humble, and I dislike him more humble than I did as an arrogant guy because I don't think it's him. And when I've been down on him ever since I learned that he took a stone out of a big damn pile, of rocks every month to remind him that life was not that life on earth was not eternal. Shut up. I guess that, that certainly was, and Zim, I think Zim has worked harder to get along with him this year than he ever has, don't you?
Yes.
Even as irritated as he was the second day of training camp when he found out the guy had to go into quarantine because and he was going to wear plexiglass around his head so he wouldn't rather than get a vaccination. I'm sure that drove him crazy. You know what? I don't think he's going to mind getting fired. I think he's ready to try it over again. I don't think he'll be a head coach again. He won't make this much money, but he's got 2 years left.
If they're coaching?
No.
His contract.
Yeah.
So he'll get a nice little check to go away. I think he might show up as somebody's defensive coordinator at about age 70, but I don't think he looks to me like a guy who's ready to get fired if they want to fire him. Pay me off and let me go home.
The Detroit game looked like that to me because I expected when they panned the sidelines to see the red-faced Zim screaming
red-faced man Zim.
But he's not going out like the one thing that disappoints me is I thought Zim would go out with just a bang, right? Like just filleting people, killing his players in press conferences. It's sort of just going to be he's gone now.
Yeah, he does look kind of like disengaged, or it's not. It's hard to put a finger on it, but I think you guys are right. He just it looks like he knows that. All right, this is bleeped.
Yeah, and he knows that Spielman doesn't have his back. He knows that. As I said, I said yesterday talking to Judd, that guy will drive over his back with a truck if he has to keep his own job.
Reverse it, come back. Tony Oliva and Jim Kaat, Hall of Fame bound.
Pretty fantastic as a guy who, as I said it before, as a guy who saw their first ever home game at Met Stadium in 1964. How excited we were when Tony first came up because we'd heard about him he'd been up in September, but it's funny to look back there, 62, 63, he got no at bats. He got they played the same guys all year long. They played the regular lineup and they were marginally chasing the Yankees those years, although they weren't going to catch them. But I think he had 9 at bats one September and 7 the next. But as I wrote this the other day, when he hit 410 at Wytheville, North Carolina, as in his first year out, you start looking to see what's going on with this guy, when you see 410. And by the time he showed up here in 64 and took over, then they were willing to move Allison to left field to make room for him in right field. We were all very excited to see what he would be, and he certainly was something special. And those first 2 years, winning 2 batting titles, and he should have been the MVP in 65. They gave it to Zoilo, but he was the best player on that team. And I love the guy. all the stuff about a great guy, it certainly applies to him. I know you guys have ran into him often enough
Yeah.
to just find out that he's just it was
He's up.
impossible to go to Fort Myers in spring training and not get a picture with Tony.
Yeah.
If you
I
were
mean,
a
even
fan.
like he's always hanging out in the dugout.
Yeah.
He's always actually, I think this was probably 3 years ago. I was at Target Field, just, had some tickets, just bumming around, and I was in line at the Tony O's Cuban sandwich stand in the concourse. Tony O gets in line, waits patiently behind, and him and I kind of knew each other, so we talked for a minute, but he literally waited in line at the Tony O's Cuban sandwich shop with everyone else.
He didn't go up there and say, "Give me a sandwich. I'm Tony O."
No.
That is. Well, when I when I had the consortium to have tickets at Target Field, the Legend Club there for a few years before it fell apart. He had the seats behind us. So every time you'd give the seats to somebody, they'd say, "Guess who sat behind me?" And I said, "Oh, let me think here. Tony Oliva." That's
Scott Lass.
Yeah. Mike Pagliarulo.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
These two guys are
great.
like.
Kaat's great. And I was talking to Mike Beck this morning about Minnie Minosa, too, who had his last at bat with the. It's interesting. I've had no success trying to get through to Tony the last 2 days to talk to him. But, Minnie is like Tony's predecessor is the god of Cuban baseball. Minnie was like this legend, and he was done. 64, I think, was his last year, which was Tony's first year. And Tony, worshipped him because he'd always come back and play in Havana and have 200 at bats in the Winter League in Havana before he'd go back to the States and play. And having him go in at the same time is pretty amazing, too.
And these two guys, so they're very different Hall of Fame cases. Jim Kaat pitched for 25 years, was never necessarily, and you watched him pitch, he was before my time, but he was never regarded as Sandy Koufax dominant, but he was just really, really good for 25 years.
Wow.
And then Tony Oliva was this lightning bolt for 9 or 10 years, batting titles, and then boom, the injury hits.
He would have been a 3,000 hit guy with two good knees, but he didn't get to 2,000. But thing about Kaat is, I saw today he was never, he was never great. Well, he was pretty close to great, and in '66 he was 24-7, I believe. So, and would have been the Cy Young Award winner if the American League had a Cy Young.
25 wins.
25 and 7. And how many innings? Oh, probably only about 295. Huh?
304. Didn't he also win the Gold Glove Award? He was like Greg Maddux won like 15 Gold Gloves in his era. Jim Kaat was like the Gold Glove guy.
I can tell you, however, as a guy who used to take Golden Glove votes in the Twins clubhouse in my task as a sporting news correspondent, those guys would they'd say, "Okay, pitcher, Kaat, put Kaat on there." I pretty much filled out most of the ballots. Because they'd say, "Who's the second baseman, Rusey?" I don't know. Give me a. It wasn't a science back then. I think now it's coaches. I think it's
and managers, right?
Manager and coaches.
Yeah.
I think they got the players out of it because the players they don't pay any attention to anybody but themselves. They don't know. They know who a good pitcher is. But he was an excellent fielder. Although I'm not sure he was a better fielder than Santana, who won one maybe. Santana was a magnificent fielder, but he only won one. But yeah, he was a good hitter. One other thing about God, he could have, the fact that the DH came along, that kind of bothered him because he loved to hit. He was a very good athlete, big, strong guy. He's about 6'3.5" and solid and a Dutchman, just like Bert. And but Bert kind of idolized him when he came up in 1970 because Jim was still around. So, yeah, I mean, just two really good guys. Best baseball radio guest of all time, too, Jim Kaat. So,
oh, yeah.
No, I mean, there was never anything I've said about him. We had him for 5 years, I think, on our show, and he could never be stumped. He had a story about everything. There was always a story that he had to tell that was insightful as to what the topic was.
The New England Patriots, Patrick Royce. Mac Jones under the tutelage of Bill Belichick last night. Let me look at the stats. Oh, wait. 2 of 3 for 19 yards, and they ran the football 46 times, and they won in Buffalo. It continues what you said last night, which is Bill Belichick is the greatest coach of your lifetime.
Yes, in any sport. And even though, as I also said, I'd rather shovel elephant dung in the circus than have to cover him, as a football writer, because he's a jackass, but unbelievable coach. But the wind was blowing 40 or something. It was
more than that, I think.
A couple of the kicks, the ball just went like that.
Yeah.
But what was amazing is, they run it on third down. When I got home and was watching it, 3rd and 9, they run it. They don't make anything. 4th and 9, they go for it at the 30 and run it again. They know they weren't going to make it. He was more than willing to give them the ball back the whole game, thinking that they could not succeed throwing the ball in the wind. And now Buffalo was driving at the end with a chance to win the game and get a touchdown. But it was funny at the end of the 3rd quarter, when I got home, he was dedicated to getting those last 5 minutes off the clock so that then Buffalo would turn around and have to go into the wind in the 4th quarter. Did you see Sean McDermott wasn't real happy after the game?
No, the players weren't happy. Yeah.
Somebody asked him about Belichick and blah, 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 and matching wits with Belichick. And he kind of went off on a rant that this game wasn't all about Belichick. If we would have executed our plan, we would have won the game. And blah, blah.
What was your plan? They threw like 30 passes in 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts. It didn't work.
Yeah.
They got beat by a team that threw the ball 3 times at home.
The fewest, I heard this, actually early this morning, I heard this. The fewest in franchise history. The record had been 5.
Yeah.
What must it feel like? You're Buffalo waking up today, and 20 years of Patriots, Tom Brady, Bill Belichick dominance finally comes to an end like 2 years ago, and you're like, all right, and we are ascending. We've got Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and Sean McDermott, and you look up now, and now you're 2 games back of the Patriots again in December. Like they own you again.
And they have to go there, right? Don't they play there again before it's over? Yeah, I've always said his genius came to me when he came in here to play at Chile. They were playing badly. Brady was just getting started. Remember that? And they came in to play a Chile team that was playing really good. And defensively, was that 08 maybe?
06.
06.
Halloween night of 06 at the Metrodome.
06, and they came out 5 wide.
Yep.
And they got a penalty right off the bat. And they went back and they were on the 10-yard line. They came out 5 wide again. And they had the Vikings running around in circles the entire first half.
Yeah.
And they never stopped doing it. He doesn't have a system. That's one of his secrets of success. Mm-hmm. His system is, what can we do to win today?
Yeah.
He had the Tibbs system. What can we do to win today? He's just better at it than his friend.
And then how do you communicate what's in your brain without a system to 53 guys so that they're organized every week and don't make a bunch of mistakes?
Well,
it's
one thing
incredible.
that helps is having the same linebackers for 15 years like he did at the start.
Vrabel, Brewski.
If you're willing to not screw up and be in the place you're supposed to be, you can play there forever, unless you ask for a lot of money. Then he'll run you out of there. So, and he got Collins and those guys back for about.
Collins has been back 3 times, Pat.
Yes.
I think he's on his 3rd time back with the Patriots.
Because he knows he's going to do what he wants him to do. It has got to be fascinating to be. You know what's funny though? If you hear interviews of guys who played for him, and guys who played for him and are now analysts or something like this. And it isn't this phony raving about what a great guy it is. It's more like, if you listen to what he tells you and play the system, being what are we doing now, you're going to win. And that's, I don't think he gets along with anybody by slapping them on the back. He wins them over by being the smartest SOB in the room,
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? He started off as a complete joke and bum in Cleveland. Wow, this guy. Les Steckel tried to hire him and almost had him on his staff here.
Sid had it, yeah.
In '84, he was going to be almost an assistant line coach or some damn thing, and he was going to get hired, and then something else happened, and he ended up someplace else. But Les Steckel was going to bring him in here. He was going to learn at the foot of Les Steckel.
Oh my gosh!
So.
Hey, I have one more Hall of Fame question for you before we say goodbye. Is there a difference between Tony Oliva's case that now put him in the Hall of Fame and Johan Santana's? 8-9 years of
not really
peak dominance and then injury.
Not really, but pitchers, I think, are probably treated differently if they have real short careers. I mean, Koufax obviously wasn't but he's the greatest of all time. But pitchers are, because a baseball player can, have a period of time in which he was in 900 games or something, right? Or over 1,000 games. And a pitcher makes 200 career starts or 250 career starts. He's going to have a real hard time getting in the Hall of Fame. But Phil Miller actually texted me and said, is the lesson here to Johan Santana to live a long time? Is that the lesson here for Johan? When you look at Kaat, now he didn't, Kaat won. Kaat got in because he was a Iron Man and didn't pitch. But, I think things have really relaxed, and a lot more of those guys are going to get. I think baseball is kind of taking on this, we better start doing what people want us to do. So they want us to put these guys in the Hall of Fame. And I think I wonder how long the baseball writers have left as the first source of voting on, I'm not going to go out and protest if they take it away from us, but I just wonder, I think the narrative now is we're too hard on, we make it too hard,
You expect way too much. Too much. Why can't you just be more like fans?
We have too high standards, and in some cases it might be true. But I don't know. But certainly, I think we're going to call this the Harold Baines era. Once he made it, they started taking a different look at a lot of people.
Yeah.
Minnie Minoso wasn't even in the conversation a couple of years ago, and now he's in the Hall of Fame.
Did you vote for Tony O when he was on the initial ballot?
I don't even know if I was. Yeah, I was voting then. Sure, of course I did. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, his last year was 75, so he would have been on the ballot from 76 to 90. Yeah, I voted. He was probably the first guy I marked just out of my prejudice for the guy being my favorite all-time Twins player. And as a player, and then as just a guy, my favorite all-time guy to run into at the ballpark too. So.
Yep. Yeah, he's awesome. All right, Pat, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, gentlemen. See you.
That's Patrick Royce, the legend of Teresa's in Golden Valley. Mackie and Judd.